are gonna, I don't want it.
Jennifer Ella, can you hear me?
Present.
Thank you. Steve Sotovic?
Affirmative.
Thank you. Tim Lepre?
Present.
Thank you. And Zona Butler?
Present.
And Mr. Plandowski?
Present.
Thank you. This open meeting of Nantucket School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order of which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting does not allow public bodies to have a public comment. It does allow public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, Nantucket School Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar app as posted on the town website, identifying how the public may join. May I please have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Tim, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Zona?
Aye.
Thank you. Jen?
Aye.
Thank you. Steve?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we've had the approval of the agenda, and it is our pleasure to welcome you, Mr. Plandowski, and offer you great thanks for putting in your application for this one-year committee position. How we will hold this meeting is we would like opening remarks from you, and then I will offer the committee to ask you questions. I approximate we will spend 20 to 30 minutes at your time to hear you and also answer any questions that you may have. So may I ask you please to just, in your words, give us some thoughts on what attracted you to this position and what you think you can offer to the school committee. Thank you.
I have been coming to Nantucket for about 40 years. 15 years ago, we bought a house in Nantucket. 2 years ago, we moved here full time. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a master's in business administration. I've spent a lot of time with youth in various programs. I was a certified soccer coach for 3 years, an adult Boy Scout leader for about 10 years, and a U.S. swimming official for 14 years. All these activities were with those who were seniors in high school and all the way down to ages 5 and 6 when I came to the swimming program. What attracted me to this has been something that has sort of gnawed at me for a lot of years, a lot more than the 2 we lived here full time. And that is the proficiency scores that I see. When you take a look at the proficiency scores, which I just looked up a couple days ago in preparation for this meeting, look at the scores for the elementary, intermediate, and middle school, and you'll see those scores for math, reading, and science are roughly 40% or less. And you have to say, how in the world can that be? Teachers average approximately $85,000 a year in salary. The school spends a fair amount of money per student, depending on which numbers you look at. It's anywhere from $22,000 to $40,000 to $38,000 actually. And it depends on whether support services are included or not included. So I look at the positives of the salary is certainly reasonable. The amount of money being spent is certainly reasonable, but the scores are not reasonable. The scores, there has to be something wrong to wind up with a 40% proficiency for those various schools. Now, the high school does better. The high school does 60%, but even at 60%, that's like failure. And it's interesting, also, if you go online, you can find the ratings of the schools. For example, the elementary school is not rated, but if you look at the intermediate school, it's ranked 2 out of 10 in the state. Take a look at the middle school, it's ranked 4 out of 10. The high school is 5 out of 10. And you got to say, wait a minute, why are those scores as low as they are? Something missing here. And there was another thing that I found of interest when I was looking through all this data, and that is participation by students in things like sports. They don't call it low, they call it very low, which surprises me. You would think that, I would think that that would be much higher, but it's not. And you wonder why in the world is that the case? Being part of the school system and being on a team representing the school is really important. I saw that with my own sons. Why doesn't that occur here? So from the questions of the low achievement numbers of 40% or less for 3 of those schools, and this participation in sports, I said, I gotta see if I can find out if I can help get to the bottom of what's going on. That's my story.
Well, thank you very much. At this point, I am going to go to each school committee member to see if there are comments or questions that they have. I'm going to go to Dr. Lepre first, if I may, please.
I would question participation in sports, since that is one thing that I think we're extremely strong in. And if you take a look at the sports we have, from sailing to tennis to soccer, boys and girls, softball, hardball, football, lacrosse, boys and girls, I mean, I think we have excellent participation. Maybe a little.
Dr. Lepre, here's what I would say. There is a website called NICS, which covers Massachusetts schools for sure. And if you look at clubs and activities, girls' athletic participation and boys' athletic participation are very low. Now, they're wrong.
Have you spoken to our athletic director?
I have not. You apparently
at-
have a new one now.
I would look at the report that we get that will outline the number of kids that are participating in sports. I mean, that to me doesn't hold up from what I see. I would raise a question. We have a very high percentage of non-English speaking children coming into the school. And I think that does affect some of the scores going along. What happens in middle school, I have never had a good answer for. Middle school math was second or third in the Commonwealth probably 15 years ago, and I'm not sure why we continue to have problems with it. I would say that, and I'm not defending everything, because I think the numbers in athletics, I'd ask you to go speak to Chris Maury and get that report. I think I'm always feeling that we can do a better job with education. I think it ends up a little bit skewed in the lower grades, quite frankly, and also in the upper grades, because if we get in kids that are late middle school and high school and are non-English speaking, that does drag down all of the scores. And we do get that. and the fact that they only give the biology exam in English, which does not help our Spanish speaking students. So, I mean, I think I would question that, but I agree that we should be doing better. And I would be very happy to work with you and see what we can do.
Great. Well, the one thing that surprised me when I was looking at all the data is that the student to teacher ratio is really favorable. You're looking at 10 to 11 students per teacher, which you would think would help drive those scores, even for those that are non-English speaking, basically. That's a lot of attention by teachers to a student. The national average is 17 versus 10 to 11 here.
But if I had occasion to look at a couple of school systems, for example, Harvard and I think Lexington, and they really don't seem to have a large percentage of non-English speaking students. And I think our scores, I'm not defending our scores should be better, but I think that there are certain impediments that we have to meet. And an awful lot of our kids become fluent in English fairly quickly, but we do continue to absorb students that come in late middle school and high school and have had interrupted education. They may be illiterate in Spanish. And we have to find, I've always felt that these kids get let down and we have to find a way to deal with it. But I certainly would appreciate your ideas.
Well, I would say if that's the case, sorting out the English speaking from those who are having a problem with English would help paint a better picture for what's going on in the school system.
That can have a big influence, but we do, I know most of the kids, I mean, if you take a look at the kids that are non-English speaking, if they come in our lower grades, they come in kindergarten, first grade, I mean, those kids are fluent in English by fourth grade. But it's the other kids that are coming in, I think, does tend to drag down the scores. But I mean, I've always felt the school system should have a responsibility even beyond what we do now. I mean, turning kids loose to get a GED doesn't necessarily answer that question, because at that point in time, they're usually working and living on their own. I mean, we've had kids going to high school and working full time, but I think that particular group of students has always bothered me, because they get here and they sort of get shortchanged. But the scores I cannot defend, and I don't understand. I know we've done had a number of different ideas and plans, but we haven't seemed to boost our scores the way I think we should.
Tim, can I just interrupt here for a minute and just see if you have any questions for Mr. Plandowski after his opening comments? You just muted, sorry, you just went back on mute. Can you unmute, please?
Those were my questions, because I think I question the athletic participation, and certainly, as I said, I would appreciate his thoughts on way we could improve.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Mr. Plandowski, do you feel that you've had appropriate time to answer where you think the improvement could be in this area? What you could be able to do to help us?
I certainly would be very happy to dig into the data to see what's really going on behind the scenes, particularly if these scores are being dragged down because of folks who don't understand English as well as others. And having, for example, two tables, one English speaking, one non-English speaking, and scores separated that way might give a whole different picture of what's going on. By melding them together, it may turn out the school gets penalized with low scores by the ranking agencies.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tim, does that conclude your questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Zona, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. First, I want to say welcome to Mr. Plandowski. We're happy that you've applied. But I do want to remind everyone that this is an interview, that we're interviewing Mr. Plandowski. And he can make the comments however he feels free to make them. But we'd be all night if we have this discussion going back and forth, back and forth. And I just want to say, you know, time is of the essence. And our goal is to find out what he can bring to the table and what he can offer. You know, I think we can paint some scenarios for him and see what his idea of how to address it might be. Give us a little bit more of a feel for what he would bring to the table. So having said that, I'm going to say this, Mr. Plandowski, that what's wrong was something you commented on. And my question is, we all feel that same way. That's the $85 million question, is what's not happening. So we picked apart the data and we made lots of changes, and we're on our way, we think, to improving scores, even our kids' level of understanding. Our school is very diverse. It is made up of English speaking, non-English speaking, and a variety of races, creeds, and religion. That's just it. It's a school of diversity. I think we are able to pull out the data and narrow down into different groups, but that's not what we want to focus on. We want to focus on the school as a whole. So having said that, my question to you would be, how would you approach coming in to a team that's been set a certain way and helping it develop some changes, keeping the student first and foremost, as well as the well-being of the teachers? The teachers are an important part of what we do. So we have to find a way to make it all fit and work together. We're working on our anti-racism issues. We're working on every aspect of diversity that we can think of and different learning styles that given by the students as well as the teachers. So how would you approach, what if you were given the task, let's say, of coming up with a plan to have our teachers as well as our students represented on a diverse committee to address different learning styles? That's a very broad and very complicated question, I know, but I want you to think about it for a moment and see what you can offer for a suggestion.
What I would suggest is, number one, you're going to need some teachers, some students, maybe some administrators, and selecting those people will be critical for the committee. You want to get people that are open-minded in terms of what's going on and not coming in with a preconceived agenda. It's going to take some time to do that because it's going to mean talking to a lot of different people to find out who the right people are that should be on the committee. And once you get that committee together, then as far as I'm concerned, it's data-driven. What are we trying to get accomplished? And let's collect the data so we can present to the entire organization, this is why we want to do what we want to do, and here are the good reasons for it. And it's not going to happen. That what you want to get done is not happening overnight. I can provide a lot of miracles in a lot of areas of business, but this is it's a little different.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zona. Steve, would you like to go next, please?
I would. Nice to put a face to your letter, by the way.
Thank you.
Could you first give me the address of the website that you said analyzed sports participation? I
Yes,
think it was.
actually, it is, I will find this for you shortly. Matter of fact, I will show it to you. How's that? That's even better.
I mean, my concern is what they're using as data. Because and I'll just keep talking while you're looking. I've been here 28 years, 24 of those as a teacher in the middle school. And we have
It's right here.
continuously, okay,
And you can see what it says, very low participation.
yeah, no, what I'm interested in is the actual website address so I can go look at it myself,
Okay, here's what you can
or the name of it.
put in Nantucket High School in Nantucket, Massachusetts, dash niche, NICHE. And go down to clubs and activities, which is going to be on page 5 of 5.
Okay, nope, that's fine. If I can find the website, I can find those various locations. As I want to see what they're using for their data because it does contradict my conclusions after 28 years. And I'll tell you right now, I had concerns early on in my career here that we were adding too many sports. But as we've added them, and we're now looking at adding track and field once we have an appropriate track for a school system our size, I cannot agree that our sports participation is low. That's just my personal comment. As for the pedagogical issues, we have been aware of the discrepancies among our student scores for quite a while. And we have been working to pull those scores together. They do have, at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, very deep dives into, excuse me, various subgroups within the overall population. And there are definitely discrepancies, and we're attempting to address those. So I really don't have any other questions for you. And so I'll pass along my time.
Thank you, Steve. Again, Jen, questions for Mr. Plandowski?
Plandowski, Jen Iller here. Thank you for being here and your interest of joining the school committee. So I'm interested, can you talk about maybe a couple of strengths that you've noticed that, you know, our district can be proud of?
Well, you used to have a really good football team, I remember,
Used to.
year after year, but then that,
Current.
that sort of went downhill for a while when some of the players were playing offense and defense because you didn't have enough football players. That's what sticks in my mind when I saw that report about low participation. I thought about that story when the football team was having a problem a while back, but they seem to be on the mend right now.
Okay, and you've spoken about, you know, low participation rates and also the challenges we faced with our scores, which we all have, you know, admittedly said that we can improve upon. So this seat is just for a very short time, and knowing, you know, that we're coming off of this pandemic and our students have been, you know, whether they've been all remote or in hybrid, partially in school, partially remote. Can you talk about what you feel would be the biggest and most pressing challenges that need attention as we head into, you know, as we look at the next school year and such a short time?
First thing to do is toss out Zoom learning. And I will tell you, I did some tutoring, math tutoring for a student in the 7th grade over this past year. Zoom education is close to impossible. I found it to be very, very difficult from my standpoint, trying to relate to the student on the math problems he had. And it was the same thing the other way around. He had a problem understanding. Without being in front of the students and explaining what's happening, you really lose a lot with Zoom training. Now, hopefully we will not see Zoom again. Hopefully it is now gone. But I don't know if I answered the rest of that. You had more of a question though.
Yeah, I just was wondering, so of everything that our students, our staff members, everything that they have been through, what would you see coming in, hopefully full in person in September, as being priorities for our district to be looking at, and the biggest challenges that we face?
Well, number one, getting the students into the classroom. I don't know how difficult that might be, or they may be happy just to get out of the former situation, but some way of greeting them in such a way that we're happy to see them come into the building and get to learn. And frankly, I've had discussions with several people about what was learned in this last year. And are there some students, and maybe a lot of students, who ought to be repeating the grade? Now, nobody wants to hear this stuff, but there are a lot of people that didn't learn a lot. And I'm afraid what the scores are going to look like when these standardized tests are given out and folks are supposed to perform well, they're going to have a tough time, in my opinion. So a lot of work needs to be done with those students when they arrive, probably a lot more than teachers anticipate. Oops.
Okay. Are you finished with your questions, Jen?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr.
You're welcome.
I will finish up the round of questions and sort of take a different look. We are a nominated board. It's an elected board, except for this position, which is of course appointed by the select board for 1 year. What would you say what is a makeup of a successful board such as ours?
I think people with a lot of different experiences. It's one of the things that I thought would be of value, having an engineering background and a master's in business, that I could bring a different perspective from others that are on the board. Also, I think a mixture of age groups from younger to older on the board, so you get a different perspective. If we're all 60-year-olds sitting around the table, that may not be such a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
You might not want to hear that, but
Well, it made me smile, but no, I appreciate your answer. Thank you. We are just coming sort of to the close of questions for you. Do you have questions for us?
No, well, the only question I have is, when will a decision be made on who fills that role?
So tonight we will have deliberations after this meeting, and we will be putting forth a recommendation to the select board. We then need to request to go on to their agenda. So part of that will depend on when the select board meeting is available for us to be an agenda item. We will attend that meeting with our recommendation, and the select board will make their vote at that time. The position that we're discussing tonight is available after June 15th.
Okay.
It is our wish to obviously not have too much downtime where we are one member short. So that is something that our committee clerk will be working with the select group to have us put on the agenda, hopefully sooner than later.
That's fine.
So I don't have a date for you, unfortunately.
That's okay. Okay.
Only one more question.
Yes, Tim.
Would you want the school committee to be older or younger?
I'd want it to be a mixture, frankly. I'd like to see some young people and some old people. The older people are going to bring the experience of years out of school and an appreciation of raising their own children and what they've gone through. And then you get some of the younger people who are going to have a whole different perspective. Their kids are in school. They got a different viewpoint. And amongst those views should come out a pretty good consensus.
Okay. We may be long end, Joe.
Very good. Dr. Leffler.
Before we invite Mr. Plandowski to leave our meeting, does anybody have any other questions? Would you raise your hand if you have any questions? Seeing none, I would absolutely very much thank you for your application. And it's always nice when somebody shows interest in our school and particularly in the school committee work. So thank you very much. And you will be hearing from Logan O'Connor, Mrs. O'Connor, as to the process after today's meeting.
That's fine. Thank you so much for the time.
Pleasure meeting you.
I know.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. So at this point, I would ask to just make sure that Mr. Anthony Fox can hear me and we can hear him. Could you please turn your camera on? Hello, Mr. Fox, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, and I can hear you. Welcome. So how we're going to do this is I will ask you to give us just an outline of why you are applying for this position, what you think you can bring to the table, and then I will offer each committee member an opportunity to ask you questions. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could just tell us what interested you or what interests you about this position.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to meet with you guys tonight. And let me just say, you guys have had a difficult job over the last year with this COVID thing. Having a son who was a freshman to a sophomore, going to be a junior, it's been crazy. In and out of school, but I think between the admin, the teachers, and the superintendent, you did the best you could. I mean, it wasn't the best sandwich, but we all had to take a bite of it. I think what I bring to the school is that I've been a volunteer for 20 years. I've been a substitute teacher for the last TA elementary school, pre-K through second grade. I've been on this NES parent council, CPS parent council, NHS parents council, and the UMass parents council for my daughter's freshman and sophomore years till my wife got sick. As you saw in my letter, you see what I've done. If you know me, you know I care about the school. You know I care about the kids. Everything I've ever done in my business as well, with the Star Group, you know, with Small Friends, Ozone Surf Classic, it's always been about the kids. And I've always had a good rapport being on the boards that I've been on, Boys and Girls Club. I've been on the Meals on Wheels Board of Directors. It's always been about giving back. I helped Logan bring in screenagers back when you probably could use the screenagers now, because I think that it was a lot of screen time this year. Just when you want to get your kids off the screen, what happens? They go back to the screen. My son had 3 screens at home. I go, which one's that? Well, you have to figure it out, and all the kids had to adapt, and so did the teachers. You know, I went back into the school, and I can remember being in 2nd grade, and the poor teacher was trying to teach remote to half the kids, the other half at home, and all of a sudden, the whole internet went down. But I think I get along really well with admin, with the teachers. I don't think that, and what some Robin Harvey said to me, she said, never be afraid to join something, but always join a committee before you join a board. You can always see how a board works by joining a committee. I know Robin said that to me a long time ago. And I also think back to what Marianne Stan always said, to try to get people to run for stuff. And how do you get your toes in the water? Well, I think this 1-year position gets my toes in the water. And I'd love to see someone who looks like me on this committee, someone of color, to be honest.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I am going to now ask the school committee to see if they have any questions, and I'm going to go to Dr. Lepre first.
Rocky, did you go to school here?
Yes, sir. I graduated in 1983, back when we had a good football team.
Watch that talk.
No, I graduated in 83. We won the Super Bowl in 1980. The Super Bowl in 83. Played when I went to school, there was only 3 sports. There was basketball, football, and Mr. Webb was just starting baseball. There wasn't any soccer because Vito wasn't a fan of soccer back in those days, but there was no lacrosse. There was no awesome to the girls volleyball team. There was no volleyball. There was no golf. Yes, sir. I went I went to Academy Hill to do high school. Yes, sir.
Now, how do you see your role on the committee?
Well, I'm not the data guy, but I'm a guy who can work within the pie. So if you have what you bring to this pie, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say and maybe learn something from what you bring to the table. What I bring is the interaction with the students, with the parents, with the teachers, with the admin. That's what I can bring to this. I'm not going to be that guy who's like, well, I'm not going to give you all these stats on the data is that the football team is down in participation. That's not who I am. As you read my letter of intent, you can see what I'm about and you know what I'm about. I'm all about giving back, putting both feet in. Let's work together to get the job done. Let's go this way, not this way.
Well, it's interesting to me. I mean, everybody's been to school, so they have an opinion on how schools should run. But then the rubber meets the road, and we have obligations to our teachers, obligations to our parents, obligations to our students, and they're sometimes at odds to each other.
Yeah.
So I think one of the key things is to realize that watching us sit up there or be on Zoom, it gets a little more complicated when you get into the system. But I'm really enthusiastic to see you applying, because I think you do bring something that is a little bit different.
Well, thank you, sir.
That's all I've got.
No more questions, Tim?
No.
Okay. Jen, I'm going to go to you next, please.
Rocky, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So as you know, because you're a parent and just like me, we saw the home perspective of what it looked like this last year when our kids were at home, either hybrid or fully remote. So it's so great that our kids are back in person, full, 5 days a week now. I am wondering, it is such a small term that you would be serving, but what would you see as the greatest needs for our students, for our district going into next school year? Like, where do you see, just the greatest needs, I guess, for our district?
Well, I think one thing that everyone's going to have to do is reacclimate themselves, because when all these kids went back to full, they were still getting used to it. Some were A, B, C, or D, but now when you go back to it in September, it's everyone's back in together. But that's going to take acclimation from the parents, from the teachers, to the students, to admin. I think that they're going to have to, it's almost like retraining your brain a little bit. You know what I mean? What I'd like to see is, I'm going to use a golf, I don't want to give them a mulligan, but maybe just come back in a little softer in September and then generally build it up. But that would be something that, administration and the teachers union would have to discuss. But I just want to, okay, we're back in September. When's the school date start? September, whatever it is, come back in full force. Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of moving around of classrooms. Like I was in an elementary school room a while back, and there was 2 empty classrooms in there. I'm like, just 2 empty rooms. I'm not sure if that's the same for NIS or CPS or NHS, but just to take it slowly within the district and everyone not rushing. And I mean, I'm not sure what the data says, but I'm saying just common sense says for my son, who will be a junior, and what his friends tell me, it's like, you know what, just let us take it a little slower at the beginning.
Thank you, Rocky. And can you speak a little bit to how you view the importance of safety and security within the district?
Well, I think safety and security is of the utmost. What I think what this COVID did do for me, being at NES, which I know all the teachers loved, was not having all those parents drop all their kids off in the classrooms and just linger. You came out, you lined up, and you beat it. Came around the circle, you stayed in your car. And the teachers loved that, because the last thing you want to do is have that first grader who's going to cry for an hour in the classroom because his mama won't leave.
Mm-hmm.
But once he gets around his classmates and he's in that line with the rope, it was easier for him to adjust into the room. You know what I mean? And then when he finally got into the room, that poor teacher or that TA wasn't having to deal with that individual for 35 minutes, calm him down, because that was already taken care of right there. And the security part of it is there's no people wandering around NES.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak upon NIS or CPS or NHS, but I know at NES, when I talked to the teachers, they absolutely loved it. They loved it. And it made it easier for the kids to get to classroom. It was better flow. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Rocky. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Zona, would you like to go next, please?
Hi, Zona.
It's nice to see you here.
Thank you for having me.
It's too bad I don't have any kids in school, so I won't be, pounding your phone with questions about what's going on once you make the committee, if you do.
I don't think you have to have kids in school to call the committee. If you care everywhere.
I want to say, the toughest part for me was being on the schools committee side. It's one thing to be a parent and having a relationship with teachers, admin, parents. It's a whole nother ball game when you become school committee. So I want to just say that to you so you can prepare yourself just a little bit. It's not anything that you necessarily do, but they just view you in a different light. So take that in stride. If that happens, if you get that opportunity, learn to take that in stride and not take it personal. I know that you've been involved in the community for many, many years. If there's anything that I think we all know, is that we know that you are seen out there about making those connections. Those connections are going to be very, very important. You also said you wanted to see someone like yourself on the committee. Thank you. I'm like you too.
I'm not gonna hide it. That's how I feel.
So I'm going to ask you the same question, and hopefully that I asked Mr. Pendowski, and hopefully you heard it, is that, we're doing a lot of things, and everyone here on the committee knows that nothing happens overnight. We know what we need to work on. We know the data and all that entails. And we are, and have been, gradually putting nuances in place to improve, to strategize, to help in those areas that we're weak in. How do you think you would help put together a committee that would kind of address some of the diversity needs, anti-racism, the gambit of the student body that we have, to make sure everyone is taken care of, if you will?
Are you talking about a subcommittee of the school committee?
Subcommittee of the school committee, subcommittee, we are all on different subcommittees.
Right,
And we also volunteer with any committee that the school creates that wants our input.
Well, I know all about being on committees and in subcommittees and a subcommittee. I think that as far as the school goes, all the things you're talking about, Zona, how you how I would go about choosing a committee. You maybe pick 1 or 2 people off this committee, then I would talk to the student council. I would talk to the councils that are already involved in the schools, whether they be NES, CPS, NAS, NHS, and pluck them from there, right? And make that committee and make it, don't make it exclusive, make it inclusive so the kids are involved too. So you have a school committee member, you have a teacher, you have a couple of students who want to be involved in it. You know what I mean? Make it well-rounded, and you get a community member in there. I think the more people and the more you can give them different people. I want to learn from you guys. I'm hoping that's something you can learn from me as well. I don't know all the answers, but it's no such thing as a dumb question. And how you get those subcommittees is you just put it out there and say, hey, listen, we're trying to start this committee on this. What do you think? Would you like to be involved in that? Oh, you wouldn't? What about this subcommittee? How about this? Does it pique your interest? Well, what subcommittees should we start? Because there might be committees that we haven't even thought about that these kids are thinking about. Because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about the kids, right? So there might be something this school's thinking about that all these, I mean, if you go back in high school, I mean, some of these kids were the best schools in the country because they get a good education there. You get out of it what you put into it. So I think that we can pluck from what we have here of this committee and make a little smaller committee, a little subcommittee. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Hey, Ms. Butler.
I'm done.
Thank you, Zona. Steve, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm not so sure how fair it is being last. All the good questions have been asked. Rocky, it's good to see you again. I think, I mean, I can confirm that you are active. I think we first met at a CPS school council meeting, and then you did show up at some of Superintendent Hallett's open forum Mondays, or whatever those were called. So there's no question that you have a diversity of interests as far as the schools are concerned. I'm gonna ask Miss Iller's question a slightly different way. And that is, what do we need to fix? What needs fixing and what doesn't need fixing, in your opinion?
Well, I can only give you my opinion as a parent. Now, you guys have more data than I have to find out what needs fixing and what doesn't. I'm only, right now, I'm only an observer from outside and going through some of your meetings. One thing, can you make this committee meeting, cut it down by an hour? I think that would be helpful. But as far as the school system goes, I mean, like I said, you guys have more information than I have. So I can't really tell you, I can only tell you what from the elementary school or what my son and his friends tell me. And right now, they just wanted consistency, but they couldn't have consistency because of what the state said, what our local Board of Health said. But moving forward, when September rolls around, they'll have that consistency. So I'd like to answer your question, but I really can't, not having all the information that you have in front of you.
Well, but Rocky, what I'm asking is your perspective, though, and as a parent and
My
a
perspective,
substitute teacher and all of the things that I see in your letter here, just, you know, you're a valuable, your input
okay, I
can
think
be valuable.
really, I think MCAS should be gone. I'm not a fan of standardized testing. There, I said it. But that's just my opinion. Do I think that my son, as a sophomore, should have taken an MCAS test this year? No way. You know what I mean? He hasn't been in school for a year and a half. Why was he taking that test? I think that there's other ways to reach out as far as teachers' assistants go, is that there's a bunch of people on Nantucket that if the pay was higher, they'd have more teachers' assistants. I could have worked at NES 5 days a week. They would have called me 5 days a week. Reason why people didn't want to work there, because the pay wasn't that great. Do I think there's enough supports? Yeah. I think it should be men's volleyball. Heck yeah. but I can't tell you it's so hard for me to tell you what's broke and how to fix it coming off of a pandemic. I can't, and if that doesn't give you your vote, then I apologize, because I can't answer that question without having all the information that you have in front of you.
Rocky, you have answered my question,
Okay,
and
thank you.
you've hit on topics that we hit on. So don't feel that your opinion's not valuable. What do we do best?
What do we do best? I think Nantucket does, what they do best is, I really love the way that they brought in the communities, the non-speaking of English people. I mean, if you could see how those teachers treat those elementary school students, and God, it makes me want to have another kid. No, it doesn't, just kidding. But I think that the way Nantucket has embraced people who are non-English speakers is remarkable. I really do think that. And it's a crying shame that when you have to take these standardized tests, that these children have to be scored. You know what I mean? But I really think that the teachers, from the administration, from the superintendent on down to the lowest TA, which would be me, because I'm a TAA, teacher's assistant to the assistant, which means I get to work with blocks and glue and clay, which is awesome. But I think that's one of the things I think do best. I think the teachers really, and going through it this year, and all the help, the high school teachers, when my son was missing something, they were on the phone or they were on an email and they gave a crap. So I think that what we do best is we've hired some damn good teachers.
Thank you, sir. You've answered my questions.
Thank you, Steve. So I guess I would ask the same question I've asked earlier. This is a nominated board. This position is a 1-year appointed position, but the rest of our positions have been nominated by the committee. What do you think makes up a successful committee? What is the makeup of the individuals that would make us successful?
Diversity. I don't need old people, young people, white people, black people, yellow people, brown people. I need all people, all races, all ages. We need every bean in the soup. You know what I mean? You just can't have a board that's 5 white guys or 5 women or 5 black people or 5 Hispanics. You got to have that mix. Otherwise, how are you going to take it from there or from here or from here to here? We got to get here. We got to bring it together. And I think that's what it needs, diversity. And that's one of the reasons why this 1-year position I was interested in. I knew a person of color was leaving, and to be selfish, I think I have the qualities to be on this committee, but I really wanted to see someone of color step up. Now, maybe after 1 year, we'll see what happens. But if my being on this for 1 year changes another person of color's mind, take a stab at it, then I did my job. And I helped the kids first and foremost. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
You're welcome.
At this point, I would like to ask you if you have any questions for us that come to mind in general or for any of us individually.
No, I think on the report we've had back and forth, we've answered these other questions. I've watched your meetings a lot. I would just make one recommendation is to try 2 hours or less. Because what happens, and you know, what the selectmen said in their meetings, that is that they've had viewership of up to 900 people watching their meetings from home. You know what I mean? I'm not sure what your data numbers are for your viewership through that, but it might be something that you could do it both. You know what I mean? Because there's still people at home who want to, like, I never went to a school committee meeting until it was on Zoom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what the back of his house looked like, but it was good. That's it. No, you guys are doing a great job. Like I said before, how difficult your job has been, but not just this district, but every district in the country. And I think that, you know, for Dr. Hallaby in her first year, good job.
Thank you very much.
Very well.
Well, again, thank you very much for applying. It is always heartwarming when we can find community members that take an interest not only in our schools, but willing to step up and to do the work on the committee. So the way the process works is we will have some deliberations after you have exited the meeting. And then Erica Mooney, who is here from town of Nantucket, hopefully will just guide us to the next steps. But ultimately it is a select board decision. It is our recommendation, but it is a select board decision. So
Okay.
Logan O'Connor will be in touch with you to let you know as far as our deliberations and next steps. But I would think hopefully by the end of the month, again, we have to get on the agenda for the select board with our recommendation. But I
Okay.
would imagine Mrs. O'Connor will be in touch with you prior to that.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much and have a good weekend.
Thank you
Good
very
to
much.
see you, Rocky.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. So thank you, Erica, for jumping on. I just wanted to, before we get into deliberation as a school committee, just as I saw you on there, I just thought I would just ask you for clarification for what our role is. Are we to deliberate and make a recommendation tonight? Can we, if we decide that we are ready to do that? Or do we need to wait a certain period of time?
Thank you so much. I wasn't planning to attend, but I'm so glad I did because that was fascinating. So the process is, and the deliberation is an open meeting deliberation. So whoever's on, Rocky could have stayed on, Mr. Plandowski could have stayed on to listen to the deliberation, but you will have a discussion about what your thoughts are on your candidates. And you very well can make a determination tonight who you would like to recommend. And then you would just send a memo to me addressed to the select board, and we would schedule it on an agenda as soon as we have it. Annual town election is June 15th. Zona's resignation letter stated June 15th, no, annual town election or June 30th. So there's still no written clarification of what her expiration date is or what her resignation date is. We've asked that something be submitted, but we haven't seen anything. So
Does it need to be submitted by me, Erica?
yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. It's
Oh.
June 15th.
Okay. So we've already put the agenda to bed for the 9th, so it's too late for that. Our next meeting is the 23rd, and we could very easily put it on that agenda to take your recommendation and make that appointment and get somebody right on the school committee and have a full and robust board to move forward.
Erica, may I ask, since, first of all, the statute says we have to give the select board a 30-day notice once the vacancy occurs. So that can't.
We've already been aware of the vacancy.
Yeah,
Well, I
that's
understand that,
We've been
but the
notified of
statute
that
says,
since Zona first put her resignation letter in February.
I'm sure you've been aware. We've all been aware.
We've
The
never had
statute says,
we've never had a formal letter come from the school saying, here's your 30-day notice.
yeah, right, because the statute says you can't do it till the vacancy actually exists.
No, we have already gotten clarification from town council, and that is not correct. What you can do is make a determination, you submit a recommendation, and we would appoint that person. Let's just say, for instance, if Zona's seat wasn't terminating until July 7th, we could still make that appointment for a term to start after her resignation. I have reached out to town council and have gotten clear indication on what the process says, and that is not it.
our agenda for today just says interviews. Does that make this, if we make a recommendation, if we decide to have a recommendation today, which I assume would be by vote, does that not contradict the open meeting law that says you have to have it on your agenda? All the agenda says is interviews.
Let me, I want to check that real quick and see. If that is, sorry, I'm just pulling up your agenda to make sure. Okay, so it does just say interviews. So yeah, I guess you technically need to schedule a second meeting for deliberation and a vote.
I don't
We can
think you can
reschedule.
take a vote in a workshop meeting. I
Yeah,
mean, that's my understanding.
I'm not questioning whether we can have some discussion if people want to do so. I'd say it's the actual making of the recommendation. And one other finer point, I guess, is the statute says the decision, once there is a recommendation, the decision will be made by the select board and the remaining committee members. So school committee members after the 15th, because I don't know if I'm going to be here, I don't know who's going to be here, also get to participate in that vote. Now, I assume it's not much of an issue if we narrow it down to one person.
Okay, so I am going to tell you exactly what the town charter states.
Erica, before you read that, may I, through the chair, just ask a question?
Yes,
Go into that. I'm going to direct it to Erica Mooney.
okay.
If the school committee deliberates today and they come to a conclusion and they're comfortable with their conclusion, could we not place on the agenda for the 15th, when everybody is still in force, the recommendation decision to make to the Board of Selectmen? Could we not do it that way?
I mean, as far as I know, you can do that. You
Or a
would just put, you
technicality
add
of-
it to your regular school committee agenda, and you can even say deliberation / vote on recommendation for school committee vacancy.
Okay. But we could discuss today here.
Yeah, you can have some discussion, but
Technically,
but based on the clarification of looking at the posting, Steve is right. It doesn't say vote. So just to be very transparent with the open meeting law, I would put that on your next agenda.
okay, but we'll still have a full quorum if everyone attends. We will still have everyone because Zona will be active until midnight. Zona.
Mhm.
And then we can send the memo, but you could pre-plan essentially for the 23rd because we still have time with all of the regulatory laws and postings. Correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
That was going to be my recommendation, is that it be on our next agenda, so.
But to go back to whether it's a joint select board and school committee decision, the charter provides that the Board of Selectmen may, at a public meeting, exercise the following powers: to be filled by appointment any elective position on a town board, commission, or council vacant by a reason of member's resignation, death, or incapacity beyond temporary illness. And the successor so elected then to serve for the remainder of the member's unexpired term. So this is similar to the procedure to fill a vacancy on an elected board found in General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11, in which the board with the vacancy gives notice to the select board of the vacancy, and then the two boards hold a joint meeting and vote to make an appointment to run until the next annual town election. However, under Section 3.4, Paragraph 5 of the town charter, there is no mention of the second board, and the select board makes the appointment on its own. So Chapter 41, it varies from that, but the charter can be different from the general laws and still be valid. So even though the statute that you're referencing says it's a joint committee, our town charter trumps that. And our town charter states it's only the Board of Selectmen or Select Board that makes the final decision. You make the recommendation for the appointment, the board makes the appointment.
Understood. Thank you, Erica. Logan?
I did reference the town charter, knowing that it does have another piece to the puzzle back when we had started this process. So it would be the invite. We essentially would have members of the school committee attend that selected meeting, at which point all of that will happen on the Board of Selectmen's agenda. It is not another meeting that is separate from any regulatory meeting. We're just on the agenda. Just wanted to make sure that that's clear.
And we've had the school committee post to attend the select board meeting. The chair then gets up and reviews the recommendation and recommends a candidate, and then the Board of Selectmen makes the vote.
So if all of us, we have a quorum attends, then we need to publicly roll call our meeting, correct? Because we are school committee attending the Board of Selectmen.
Yes, yes.
Because we all could potentially speak. I mean,
best, but you wouldn't necessarily be deliberating at that meeting, but it's always best to post, just to cover yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's probably safer to post, but if we've already
Made the vote.
made our decision and it's just being presented to the select board, we're essentially, except for presumably our chairperson who's made the recommendation, does it have to be just one person, by the way, that we recommend?
Yes,
Then,
because we have one vacancy. So you are, it's not up to the board to decide who it's going to be. You recommend your candidate and then they vote to make it official.
yeah, then it feels to me, and I'm not going to go look anything up legal. We can all attend essentially as observers is
Yes,
what it would amount to.
Right.
You could register and be an attendee. You could watch it on YouTube, but obviously we would like the chair at least to be a panelist so that she could participate in the discussion and review the recommendation.
Right. Thank you. Is everybody clear? Does anyone have any questions? And presumably this would be the meeting of the 23rd.
Yes, I can put a placeholder on the 23rd if you all think that the vote will be done on the 15th.
I believe it will. Does anybody have any other concerns about that happening?
I wonder if we should be discussing these two candidates today then,
Yes.
since it just says interviews, or if we should reserve those discussions for the evening of the 15th.
You can discuss the interviews now.
That's not what the agenda says.
You can
Is all I'm
discuss,
saying.
you're in an open meeting. You can discuss them now. The interviews, they could still be there if they wanted to be. If you want to deliberate while it's fresh, Erica already said that there would be no reason why you can't do that now. And then you can go in on the 15th with an agenda item that makes the recommendation per your choice, your vote.
And you could, there's no, I'm looking at your agenda again. There's no school committee comment section. It was basically vacancy interviews and then adjournment.
Best case, could we reschedule a meeting within the however number of days we need to let posting happen and have the discussion?
I mean, you could also have the discussion at your already scheduled meeting.
On the
But it's
15th.
not
On
till
the
the 15th.
15th, you mean?
It's not till I would prefer we do it before then. When we go into 15, we know that we're making our recommendation. I just think that's my opinion, you all. I mean, what is the soonest we can have
And
another?
all
quick
I'm concerned
Zoom
about
meeting?
is that we don't violate the open meeting law.
I know what you're
If we
saying, Steve.
schedule another
So,
meeting,
Yeah.
that's fine with me too.
I think we should schedule another quick Zoom meeting and make everybody happy, and we won't be going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth all day.
I will say, if I can note one thing, for our annual appointments for select board, we have applicants. We just had our first group of applicants speak on their applications on the 2nd last night. And then we have another group coming in on the 9th. And then the board deliberates and makes their appointments on the 23rd. We don't have a meeting on the 16th. So we don't schedule a second meeting. We put it on the agenda, on the regularly scheduled agenda, and just get it done in one. So, I mean, but that's us. You guys are more than welcome to do it any way you want.
I guess I would ask now, Logan, among others, what else do we have? There isn't a whole lot on the agenda for the 15th, is there? I mean, we're going to do Beth's evaluation and vote, hopefully, on the custodian's contract.
The athletic the athletic program update will happen. So Chris's final update. I believe we also have, I have to look at the horizon, but I can tell you.
It's not a question of length.
Yeah, it just
I
seems
just
to me
know
that
that
we
in-
have
we've done
time
this-
to discuss
We've done
it
this
that
twice
night.
before, and we've never, the school committee has never not discussed the candidates that came before them. I'm just saying in past practice. They didn't violate any open meeting laws when they had the interviews previously. They were in a meeting, they had the interviews, they deliberated, they made a decision. So I'm not quite sure why it is that we're sitting here, we're able to deliberate doing this, but you, Steve, don't wish to deliberate on the interviews that you just had. Anybody could be a part of this meeting. The meeting is posted. The interviewees were part of the meeting and could have stayed here. You don't have to make a formal decision because you could do that on Tuesday, but I'm not sure why we need to push this forward. So if you don't,
I
want to push it
simply
forward.
because all our agenda says is interviews. That's
think
what was
it's a mandate.
posted.
Jen, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. I mentioned to you earlier, I have to disconnect at 4:30. So unfortunately, I'm not available to deliberate now if that's what you choose to do. And if you wanted my vote, I would prefer to do this on the 15th at our next scheduled school committee, just because of graduation week coming up. I know that I have a lot of responsibilities, and it's going to be challenging for me to find time to meet. That's just coming from me.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Erica?
I was just going to say too, I think in the past, when you've had this on your agenda, you've also had a second agenda portion that showed the deliberation, and doesn't seem to be on here. So I would recommend waiting, just to be on the safe side of the open meeting law. Schedule it for the
Okay.
15th. Put it on as a regular agenda item, deliberation and vote on school committee vacancy number.
Okay, thank you. So that's what we will do. Please put that on the agenda for the 15th, deliberation and vote.
And I'm going to go too, because I've got baccalaureate at 5.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here, Erica. Goodbye.
Great. If there are no other comments or questions regarding the interviews, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Tim, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Thank you, Steve.
Aye.
Thank you, Zona. Thank you, Pauline. Aye. Thank you, everybody. See you on the 15th.
Zona and Tim, I will see you in my office in a half an hour or an hour. Sorry, 5:30.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.